Hello and welcome to this episode of Trident Talks. I'm Rosie, a senior consultant over at Trident, and I'm delighted to be joined by Michael from CyVers. Now, before I ramble on, because I can definitely do that and jump straight in, I'm sure the listeners would love to know a little bit about yourself and what really got you into the position you are today.
Hey, Rosie, a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Michael Pearl. I'm the VP Go-to-Market of CyVers, Go-to-Market and Strategy. Essentially, I'm in the fintech and crypto industry since about 2013. I'm a lawyer by trade, but I don't practice as much. Nobody's perfect. And essentially, for the last 12 or so years, I was involved in fintech and crypto, primarily in GTM roles, which means, in simple words, business development, marketing, and different strategic roles. Basically, know the industry, from end to end. And now, it's very exciting times being in the industry and also in CyVers because we're doing amazing things, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it in a second.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll definitely kind of dive into, I guess, these topics in a lot more detail. Now, you mentioned there, you've obviously been in the space for kind of like 10 plus years. And obviously this industry has shifted a lot, and I'm sure it will kind of continue to do so. That's just kind of how the space is. From where you stand as well in that kind of go-to-market role, obviously you're facing off with customers a lot, or if you're not directly, your team is. How do you think the conversation is changing with them?
So I think that the clients and the prospects are changing along with the industry. So this industry, I still remember, small meetups of like, 5 people in a room trying to convince you to buy Bitcoin for like $5, right?
Yeah.
Should have been smarter then.
Yeah, we all should. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I look at the evolution of the personas, right? So we started off from the geeks, then it switched off to the degens and kind of anarchist people that want to change the way that finance is being done, and the way that people communicate and exchange value. And then gradually you saw kind of a lot of corporate people entering the space. So you could see a movement from kind of traditional tech companies into the crypto space, and then later on a movement from the traditional finance space, the Goldman Sachs of the world and the Barclays of the world, moving into crypto and becoming kind of more involved. I think now the space is much more mature, much more institutional. So obviously the conversation has changed, right? So just to give you a specific example, back in the days, you used to market to crypto people, via Discord and X, and even some other, Reddit and some other more fringe channels. Whereas now, I mean, it kind of shifted and moved towards the more traditional enterprise space where you target people on LinkedIn, and you go to conferences that some of them are still kind of crazy, but others are becoming much more buttoned up and kind of more institutional.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll get into, because I've got a few questions about that kind of later on the podcast. But I guess it's interesting, like all spaces in kind of tech broadly is obviously changing, but this kind of concept, I guess, is still fairly new in its kind of lifespan. Now, obviously, when talking about this kind of threat or attack kind of vectors are constantly kind of changing as well. What emerging threats are you kind of seeing that you are most concerned about, or I guess kind of in your space you're most concerned about?
Yeah, so perhaps before I answer that, just 2 words about CyVers and what we do, and then it can kind of frame my answer.
Link in, yeah.
Yeah, in a better way. So essentially, CyVers is the leader in real-time Web3 security, fraud prevention, and the multiple threats in the Web3 space. Basically, the idea behind CyVers and the reason why the founders actually founded the company was that they saw a gap where you had multiple companies that were providing kind of pre-launch security services, let's say audits and key management and so on. They were doing a great job. but eventually it didn't prevent the hacks. And then after the hack or scam happens, then you have the post-mortem companies, Chainalysis, Elliptic, again doing a great job, but they can basically tell you where the funds went to and what happened to the funds and so on. But there was no real-time protection, and that was basically the gap. And the idea was to bring in an AI-powered real-time detection and prevention eventually. And we were AI much before it was cool. Uh, so basically, we harnessed all the know-how, all the patents that the founders have in the machine learning and AI space to prevent hacks in real time. Now, fast forward to a question, I'm going back to that. I think that the most predominant peril that we see right now is the fact that, given the fact that so much attention was brought into protecting wallets and private keys, essentially the founders have built a fortress around their assets. So the hackers had to outsmart them, right? So they were thinking of other ways to get to your funds. And the way to get to that is essentially understanding that at the end of the road, the people that hold the keys, it doesn't matter how secure they are still people. And by social engineering, and here, the new wave of AI kicks in where you can impersonate, and basically pose as any person, whether it's somebody that is close to you or maybe somebody that is looking your fantasy, whether it's a romantic fantasy or a professional fantasy, and eventually they can trick you to eventually open this vault and to gain them to give them access. Oftentimes, by the way, they can basically trick you to send the funds. It's not only opening a vault not knowingly, it's even sending the funds to the wrong person.
Oh.
And if we have time, we can get into multiple examples of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the main challenge that companies and individuals are facing right now. And obviously, we're trying to help them with how to prevent that and how to mitigate the situation.
Staying on that topic then, I guess, of kind of like AI, obviously it's transforming kind of everything at the moment, but obviously specifically kind of this space or the security space more generally, I guess. And like you said, you guys, I think if you're not implementing it into your product and your platform, you're already kind of failing or you're already far behind in this space. How, I guess, so you guys are leveraging AI, but obviously you're needing to stay ahead of these hackers or attackers, whatever you want to kind of call them, because they're also using AI and automation to get into, I guess, the systems. How are you guys working around that?
So I think that whenever a new technology emerges, you can choose not to engage with it, but at the end of the way, you cannot ignore it, and the decision is not yours. And just to give you a specific example, the thing is that if you are a digital asset platform, and one of your main goals is to protect the assets of your company and of your users. So you cannot choose not to engage with AI, given the fact that the AI gives your adversaries, the hackers, it gives them a competitive edge, right? So they have the secret weapon that you don't have, and if they have it on the offense, you need to have it on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes hand in hand. Now, it is not to say that you see right now AI is everything. And to be perfectly honest, and by the way, the premise of the podcast is to talk about GTM.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to tie it up, oftentimes it is used as a marketing tool. I
Yeah.
remember that in the beginning of the blockchain craze, when you had ICOs and later on meme coins and NFTs, everything was blockchain, regardless of whether this technology is needed or not.
Okay.
So similar to that right now, everything is AI. So I'm not saying that necessarily, let's say if you have an amazing front-end platform and everyone's using it and enjoying it and you did your ABC testing with your product managers, it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily add an AI agent or a bot, right? But maybe you need to add AI on the backend for security or for optimization. So I think that AI is a tool. We need to think wisely how to implement it, but we cannot ignore it. That's for sure.
100%. I think that's kind of the similar conversations I'm having with different founders and kind of security leaders in the space. It's kind of, it is a tool, but it can also be that kind of like help out in an attack or kind of a hacker situation. Speaking about, because obviously talking about
By the way, sorry
sorry.
to sorry to cut you. Just to add something to that.
Mm.
So this week, actually, Anthropic, which is the parent company of Claude, they put out a research where they played with their AI agents, and essentially they test them into hacking into smart contracts, right? So these AI agents, they managed to find zero-day vulnerabilities in several smart contracts. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's something that you can look up. And essentially, they proved that AI agents can be used, to hack and to exploit vulnerabilities and so on. I can tell you that this obviously gained a lot of attention, but I can tell you that this is already old news, right? Because we see that, as early as about a year and a half ago, that already, AI methods are being deployed by the hackers. And by the way, when I say hackers, I don't mean somebody sitting in their mom's garage, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's state actors, it's huge conglomerates. So they have the means. And obviously, when you're on the defense, you need to have, to deploy the same technology, if not something even better.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. It's good to have I guess like a key case study and something that's obviously so relevant and happened recently. So awesome. We can dive into a few more in a moment as well. Sticking on the theme of kind of like we've said, this is just got kind of go to market in this space as well. Obviously, bringing any product, I guess, to market in this space isn't easy anyway. What do you think your biggest kind of go to market hurdles have been so far? And I guess, do you have any customer feedback or insights that you'll be able to provide?
Yeah, so I think that let's start from the positive, right? So I think that obviously there is some awareness to security. It's not the Wild West that I used to see in the, in let's say 2017, 2018, at the beginning of the ICO craze, where nobody cared about security and they were just building until they got hacked and rolled everything back.
Yeah.
So definitely the awareness is becoming more kind of prominent, and you read the news, and there was the Bybit hack, $1.25 billion. So everyone's aware. Having said that, I think that whenever a founder, especially if it's a smaller DeFi project, whenever a founder thinks of his priorities, his or her priorities, security is definitely not number one. Oftentimes, it's not even number five. So they are laser focused on, go to market, as they should, right? But at the end of the day, they don't understand that the probability of something happening that will put all this hard work to waste is very high, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not saying that security should be your first goal, because you need to build, you need to do your go to market, you need to have a close relationship with the investors and so on and so forth, but it still should be at least in the top 5 priorities. Because if you do not invest resources and you do not invest manpower and thought and strategy into your security, and by the way, not only security, also fraud prevention, and other ways to basically safeguard your funds and your clients' funds, then you're going to lose. Now, the hurdle and the challenge of being a cybersecurity fraud prevention company is to convince those companies that they need to be minded about it. Obviously, another thing that helps here is the fact that the regulators are aware of that. And you see more and more kind of regulatory pressure awareness. And obviously, this is something that is more enabling for the business side of things.
You said about there, I guess, kind of convincing, and this is slightly kind of off topic, what we were just the question there. But a lot of our listeners are kind of, obviously, we're a search organization, and a lot of the listeners will be kind of candidates if they're actively looking or potentially passively looking. what I guess is you like a leader are you looking for if you were to like build out kind of like a go-to-market team? So you're saying obviously you're looking for someone maybe that can sell a problem as well as like a solution. What would you be looking for in like an account executive?
So it's a very good question. I think that the challenge in general in crypto Web3,
Hmm.
even fintech to some extent, is that you cannot be kind of one-faceted, right? So you have to be a multi-layered professional. So
Yeah.
you have to understand a little bit of regulation, like I've mentioned. You need to be very technical because it's not like selling something that is, off the shelf and it's a very nascent industry and it's very technical. So you have to know what you're saying and to explain it and to know the difference between, I don't know, an EVM and Cosmos. Okay, so you have to uh, thoroughly understand
Mhm.
the nuances. And also you have to understand finance, right? Because at the end of the day, crypto, at least in the first application of crypto or of blockchain rather, it was essentially money, right? So you have
Mhm.
to understand finances and you have to understand economy and so on. So I think that the first step, the stepping stone of entering into this market is to thoroughly understand it. Now, the good news is that, going back to AI, you have so many tools right now, free
Yeah.
tools, and, just conversing with ChatGPT or Claude and just learning about this industry. Now, on top of that, after you've learned and you have the basic 101, then you can build on top of that. So then you have to work on your network because as an account executive, you have to understand which companies are out there. Who is your ICP? Who do you want to, market to? Know the names of some of the key players. So that's essentially kind of a mix between
Mhm.
this new nascent industry where you have to be a specialist in ABC and also kind of the old school, sales go to marketing practices where you have to, be a people's person, you have to network, you have to do market research. So
It's
a
a
lot
lot.
of things together. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a bit of a side kind of question there, but I think it's something it's really important when talking, especially to kind of sales leaders in a space like this where you have to be highly specialist. And also because that's kind of what we're discussing, hurdles and being able to overcome these kind of challenges. I guess going back a bit more kind of back on topic now to do with kind of CyVers specifically, there's obviously quite a few, I guess, general blockchain security companies out there. What makes CyVers different? Is it the AI piece or is there something else?
So it's a very good question. Obviously, the AI is definitely a differentiator that we have. And also, you have to understand that you can call many things AI, but at the end of the day, you have to see what's in it, right? So you have to see the quality of the technology. Because, for instance, you can say that you present yourself as a real-time security company, and then the question arises, what kind of threat vectors do you cover? What's the rate of false positives that you have? Because if your alert will trigger a multi-billion-dollar exchange to stop trading, right? Or to prevent themselves from, executing multiple trades or to block, outgoing transactions, whatever. This can cost the company a lot. So false positives are definitely something that should be on your mind. So at the end of the day, you have to look into the small nuances to understand what's your differentiator. Now, specifically for CyVers, apart from the fact that our bread and butter, real-time security, we basically dominate that. If you Google CyVers, you will see that almost any major hack in the industry was attributed to us as the first ones,
Wow,
oftentimes the only ones that detected it was Xerox, Bybit, Radiant Capital. That's just on top of my
that's
head right
huge.
now.
That's
Yeah,
massive. Wow.
yeah, and beyond that, now we've gone very deep into the fraud prevention space. So I don't know if people know that, but actually fraud is bigger than hacks in the Web3 space. Obviously, it's less kind of sexy because when you hear $1.5 billion, disappear in an instant, that's much more kind of good for the news cycle. But when you have hundreds of thousands of people that have five, 50, $100,000 stolen on a daily basis, then, at the end of the day, it accumulates to billions of dollars. And we've detected this year $25 billion in fraud. And more importantly, and that's the thing that I'm most proud of, we prevented $500 million, $500 million in potential losses from fraud and hacks. So that's, to be honest, that's the thing that I'm most proud of. And
Big
that
win.
actually makes an impact. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a huge impact. And I think for any kind of security leaders or CISOs or kind of whoever's really listening right now, it kind of feels like, why wouldn't you adopt this kind of platform where it can, well, save you so much money and also reduce the risk of this X amount kind of being taken as well? I guess, have you seen any patterns with organizations shifting to kind of real-time monitoring rather than waiting to see a breach?
Yeah, I think that, again, the good news for us, and I think that for the industry as a whole, is the fact that, yes, more and more companies understand, the meaning of real time, right? And understand that essentially you cannot be passive about it, right? You need to have some control. CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers and other security executives, they understand now that they need to be much more proactive. By the way, not only with respect to that, you see more and more companies establishing security operation centers and, hiring more manpower for security, for fraud prevention. So I think it's part of this maturity that I was talking about with respect to the industry, which, by the way, now is prompted by the influx of institutional funds into the industry. So obviously, the institutional standard for security, for compliance, for fraud prevention, for risk management, it is something that is being kind of migrated into the Web3 space. And I think it's a very welcomed and a very positive move.
Awesome. And you kind of mentioned it there earlier on this podcast as well. Obviously, this space is maturing, and I think it's becoming a lot more spoken about as well. And that obviously comes with regulations changing. I know there's a lot of different ones between EMEA and kind of the US, for example, just to name a couple. That also comes with obviously opportunity, but also maybe, I guess, like some walls coming up as well. How does CyVers kind of try to overcome that?
So I think that actually for us as a company, obviously regulation is a very positive thing. If you are a crypto exchange, then maybe, whenever you hear that there's a new circular issued by, your relevant regulator, then, you immediately hear more expenses, more manpower.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, for the most of it, right? I'm not super keen on regulation, but for the most of it, there is a lot of reason behind it. And at the end of the day, it's aimed to protect the investors and to protect the companies themselves. That's what is kind of lacking right now in the understanding of this. So just to give you a few examples. So I think that this year was kind of a watershed moment with that respect, because you've seen this year or these 2 years, let's say, so you had the MiCA being issued in the EU, right? And you had multiple, in the UK, you had multiple regulations by the SEC.
Yeah.
And obviously you had, the Clarity Act and the Genius Act. So all those, right? Oftentimes it looks as if it's hurdles, but at the end of the day, it's enablers, right? Because a company has a clarity, right? They know, and I think on purpose they called it the Clarity Act, right? You know what you need to have, what kind of minimal capital you need to have, what type of a license you need to have, and so on. So you can calculate it and to allocate the proper budget for it and just go for it, right? And you're going to be protected from the regulator interfering with what you do. But on the other hand, what we see is, and this is kind of lesser known, is that you have a huge amount of consumer protection rules. So the SEC has issued the APP fraud regulation, right? So essentially, a client can request for a reimbursement of up to £85,000, if I'm not mistaken, if he or she were defrauded, right? And you have similar regulation in East Asian countries, Hong Kong, Singapore, and so on.
Yeah.
So all over the world, you see that consumer protection kicks in, because more people are using crypto, more people are losing funds, and the regulators are prompted to be more proactive. So I think that this kind of two-sided pattern that we see right now, for the most of it, it's positive. But the companies, in order to remain compliant, they need to be proactive as well, right? So they need to have the proper tools to protect the funds from being stolen, either by hacks or fraud or scams. They need to make sure that their AML policy is much more stringent, coming very close to what we see in financial institutions. So it's kind of a watershed moment. I'm sure we're going to see more regulation coming, and I think that the industry should become accustomed to that. It should adapt to that.
Awesome, because I think when I normally ask that question for most organizations, just because there's always so much change and there could be a regulation that comes in tomorrow that in a year is completely different. And normally it's to do with kind of AI. And I think a lot of companies are thinking it's going to limit on what we can kind of offer as a security service, or kind of, I guess, completely stop what they're doing. It feels like for you guys, it actually is aiding because these regulations are coming in, and then CyVers or other organizations can kind of swoop in and offer a platform that actually helps them, I guess, comply with laws and everything like that. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how, I guess, globally everything kind of changes over the next year or so. Well, look, I appreciate you kind of jumping on today and running through as much as you can about kind of CyVers and I guess your kind of go-to-market strategy as well. Before we kind of finish up here, is there anything, I guess, that you can hint at or give some kind of insight to about CyVers? Of course, no product release. I'm sure that's top secret. But anything about expanding globally? Any new, I guess, insights you could offer?
Yeah, of course. I could share some details, right? So we've grown in a very significant way this year. And I think, again, going back to your previous questions, it's akin to the fact that, companies are trying out our product. By the way, I think that, the technical DD processes now are very serious, much more serious than what I've seen in previous years. And I think it's good news, right? So if you have a product that you're proud of and that is beta tested, you want it to be tested because you want the client to be, calm and secure about making the purchase. So we've seen quite an impressive growth. Just to give you some examples, most recently we had Binance join in as a client, Crypto.com, Ledger, quite a few other exchanges like Uphold, Independent Reserve. So obviously the prospect for next year is to grow. And again, every new partner that we have is more funds that we're saving for the end user, right? So I'm always thinking about that person that is about to send funds to some scammer that tricks them to think that, she's a beautiful girl from wherever. And then when he hits send, they have a pop-up saying that you shouldn't proceed with this transaction because CyVers engine says that it's a fraudulent network. And that's what makes me feel good about it. And our vision is to proliferate that and to have every single crypto user feel secure with where they store their funds and with how they are engaging with other people on the blockchain. So that's our vision. That's what we aim to have this year.
Yeah, because you're making, I guess, kind of last point here, you're making an impact for like the day-to-day person as well. It's not, you are obviously protecting large organizations, but you're also protecting the people on the ground that have started investing into crypto. And like you said, it could be as easy as a scam of pressing a button and just thinking you're sending the money to someone you really trust, and it's not that person at all. I think everyone's been through a situation where you start to question, actually, can I send money here? So I think that's what's kind of the big thing. You are making that impact in the space. Now, we will, of course, kind of drop all the links and everything. So if anyone has any questions, they could reach out. Would it be yourself to reach out to directly, or is there someone you'd recommend?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me. If you want to learn more about the space of Web3 security and fraud prevention, I think it's a fascinating space that is
Yeah.
only going to grow, unfortunately, because the bad players are also in growth mode, right? And they're scaling and expanding. So feel free to engage. I would love to hear, if there are any questions or people that want to learn and to basically partner.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. We will definitely kind of send everyone your way, but appreciate your time and excited about the next kind of 6 to 12 months.
Me too. Thank you, Rosie.